What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Today we're going to be talking about the art of storytelling and how to successfully get your point across to your audience. So let's get into it. Hey you guys, I'm Perry Covington. Thanks for joining us today. What I've done today is I've brought my dad in for this video. Of all the people in my life, he is the most influential person for me as far as storytelling and the art of storytelling. Growing up, it was a lot of fun to sit by him, you know, during dinner or whenever, just talking about life, talking about random things, and he would tell me these crazy stories. And growing up, you know, your parents, you believe them and you think everything they say is absolutely true. As an adult, I've found that that might not be exactly the case, but it's still fun. It's still fun to hear him, you know, wax eloquently about a story, about a subject that he knows a little bit about, and then he creates these stories around them. And I know that he does it now, and he's kind of passed that on to me, and I do it with my kids, and it's just a fun thing that we do. So what I did was I brought him into the studio, my garage, and I've asked him to discuss a random subject. I pick a subject at random, and he talks about it, and it's fun to try to figure out what's BS and what's real, but at the same time, it's just fun to enjoy the ride of him telling a story and just, you know, listening to him and listening to what he has to say. So without further ado, let's get to my dad, Perry Covington Sr., as he discusses my random subject, and I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll chat afterwards. All right, so let's get into it. Say hi.
Oh, hi. Hi, this is the old man, and today we're going to be talking about something very unusual. Stuff I got in my hand. You commonly refer to it as jelly beans. I don't know if you can see these in the camera. Quite small. These are royal jelly beans, which are really small, but they're better. They taste better. I don't know if they taste better or it's psychological because they're small. And you say, hey, so good. You eat more because they're smaller. But anyway, getting back to the subject of jelly beans and the Egyptians. The Egyptians used sugar from sugarcane, and they rolled them up into a ball, and the women would actually take sugar and make a syrup that's commonly known today as sorghum out of the sugar cane, and they would coat the sugar with it. They didn't have the coloring, but they made it mostly for kids, and they would be giving it at special holidays, and it was also used in trading. And the beauty of it was, with a solid shell around it, it couldn't be attacked by insects, so they just had to keep it in a place where rats and things like that couldn't get to it. But very popular treat in the Egyptian era. And very few people know that that's where jelly beans originally came from. I just thought it was something you need to know.
Are you serious?
This is Grandpa signing off.
Is that really from Egyptians? Is it really from Egyptians?
I couldn't hear you.
Is it really from Egyptians?
No. It's all
I believe every single word.
Well, you got to make it sound convincing. You got to give some rationale behind the story, or the story won't fly. And you use some of the things you know to build on the lie. Like sorghum is made from sugar. I learned that in the Philippines. Sugar cane or sugar beets, mostly sugar cane. They'll take the cane itself and they'll boil it in water. And the liquid residual that's left over is sweet. And it's like Karo syrup almost. It's called, but they call it sorghum. Even today in America, you can actually buy sorghum. If you look it up online, you'll find a definition of sorghum. Sorghum, like crude oil, can be refined, and a lot of products come from it. And people don't realize that so many things that come from oil. So many things. So
let's play a game. I'm going to throw out a topic.
Okay.
And you just make something up.
All right. Did this before when I was an instructor, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Just don't have a rubber thumb.
Okay. Tell me about. Gosh.
I'm sorry?
Hold on, I'm thinking.
Oh.
Tell me the history of the movie camera, the cinema camera.
The movie camera. Well, You know what? When you talk about optics and when you talk about cameras, you have to talk about optics. You first of all have to say, where did the first optics come from? Believe it or not, the first optics were not glass at all. It was simply a drop of water in a small hole. Some guy in, I think it was either Copenhagen, somewhere in Sweden. I think the guy's name was Linkonoff or something like that. A real strange name I can't pronounce. But anyway, he was a botanist, a scientist. Today they would call him a botanist. And he wondered why, if you looked underwater and you put your hand in clear water, it would look larger. And he went so far as asking the right questions. How does this work? Why is something look larger? What's happening? And he looked at a drop of water, and he seen that a drop of water would also distort light. In other words, you could look at the drop of water and you could see like reflections inside the drop. So he took a piece of, I don't know what kind of material he used, but really thin material, and they poked a really, really small hole in it, and he put a drop of distilled water, and he held it over something, and the concave on one side, convex on the other side, formed a natural lens. And so this got him thinking, what if I could take, sand, which is basically where glass comes from, and have some master glass blowers melt some glass for me, and we could turn it into a shape of a lens. Maybe that would work, and we could magnify or reduce, depending on how you look at it, light. So maybe light can be bent. And he came up with a theory. And it's like the first person that tried to make an airplane. And he strapped feathers and wax and all kinds of stuff, and ridiculous. But he had the right idea. He was trying to imitate something that worked. He was trying to imitate a bird. Well, this guy had nothing to base his stuff on except observation, which makes him a really good scientist, because he looked at something and seen this affected this and caused this effect. So cause and effect is what science is all about. And this guy was great for his time. And so he discovered that a curved piece of something, whether it's clear glass, whether it's water, will bend light. When I got into spearfishing, really difficult if you're a hunter to shoot fish, because when you're underwater, everything is magnified. So the fish look bigger, and you shoot your gun, you got to lead it quite a bit because everything is distorted by the refraction of the water. So it affects it. So getting back to the camera, it's a long story, but when you think about how they developed cameras and something to capture images, you have to think that I did not read this, but you have to think this was discovered by just plain accident. For example, if you take something like cloth that's dyed with a dye, especially back in the days when dyes weren't permanent, and you leave them out in the sun, they fade. So what if somebody said, well, I wonder if I put something over this, like my hand, or a cutout of my hand, and strapped it to the cloth and laid it out, and would that have any effect on the coloring? And basically it did. He found out the area that was protected from the sun did not fade as much. And so they started looking into something that different chemicals that would actually do the same thing as the sun, and it would enhance the light. And I don't know who found out, but a material called silver nitrate. And it was used for medications, used for a lot of stuff that we never use it for today. But somebody discovered silver nitrate, and they found out that silver nitrate had a direct effect of making a permanent change in paper. If it was spread on paper, it would make a permanent change in the coloring, or it'd be like an image. If you could take that drop of water or that lens and put it in front of it, and the lens would actually come down to a point, the magnification, the light is always bent and comes to a point. That point is called the focal length of the lens, but if your eyeball is at that point, that's when the image is the sharpest. So he took what we would say like an oatmeal box, but of course it wasn't an oatmeal box. It was something like that. And he had a pinhole in the middle of it, and he actually had a small lens made in it, and he took some material with silver nitrate on it, and they didn't have shutters back then. They just had like screens that would go across it. And he actually was able to capture an image on a piece of paper using silver nitrate coated paper. But this process was totally awesome to them. It was almost like magic, but it was a negative. So if, like me, I would look younger because I'd have black hair, but I'd have a different color face. My shirt would be black because it's an opposite. It gives you a negative. So the art of cinematography and everything else all started at some level. People that got into photography that wanted to see things moving got the idea maybe from looking at a book. They'd take a book, had a lot of pictures in it, and they could flip pages of different scenes that would show maybe a drawing of something in motion. And as they flipped through it, they could see that it looked like it was moving. So probably the idea of putting something on film on a continuous roll and having it move and having a lens behind it might be something they could work with. So, I mean, people from all over the world were trying to develop this. People that you never thought got involved in things like this. And we think of Benjamin Franklin, people think about, him as a statesman, all the things he invented, Benjamin Franklin, fireplace, and many, many things, binoculars. I mean, not binoculars, but glasses. A lot of things that people have done in the past. But you got to think back in the time when we discovered fire. Every time we discover something new, it's like discovering fire. It's something that can hurt you, but it can also benefit you greatly. Now, for mankind, I guess the best thing that ever happened to mankind, besides them discovering seeds, where they didn't have to move and become no man, and move all the time around to find food, they could actually plant their food. So that was a big discovery. So when they became civilized and everything, and they didn't have to travel all over the place to eat, things like maybe movies in a much, much later time frame, something they could do to entertain this massive civilization, besides watching, like in Rome, watching lions tear people apart, which was great. But you're not a lot of people that want to do that. A lot of people don't want to fight lions, so they got gladiators to fight each other, but that's kind of dangerous too, and it's bloody. A lot of people don't like it, so they say we're going to get something else. So movies, there's always a need for watching something. So if they could take a story that a storyteller would tell, and apply visual to it, it's almost like watching something in real life. It's like an escape. It's like an escape from everyday life. A person can be dying of stage 4 cancer, and for an hour or two, watch a movie and get totally away from that. So a movie takes you away from your reality of where you're at, no matter where you're at, whether you're rich or whether you're dirt poor. A movie can take you away. So if you talk about the history of movie development and camera development, it's a long line of different inventions. Our cameras, most of them don't use film. We use digital photography, and we don't call that grain anymore. What the heck do we call it? We call it pixel. The smaller the pixel, the more quality the image is. So cameras, like most inventions, were kind of discovered by accident, discovered by man's curiosity and the ingenuity that man has to put things together like this, and they come up with something totally different, is what makes human beings. Our ability to communicate. We're not a lot different from animals, especially other primates. But when you look at what we, as a species, do that they can't do, we have more of a vocabulary. So far, on this planet, where we've, as far as this species has come, and there's planets that are millions of years older than ours, where the people that live there, or the species that live there, could be light years ahead of us, and we could be like ants to them. But anyway, so we've come a long ways. We went from film, we went from glass slides where the image would be formed on a piece of glass. And even the early astronomers, when they were doing astrophotography, they used ground glass to focus the image, and they used glass plates coated in silver nitrate to form the image. But you can see where this is a problem. You've seen the old cameras in the Western days where a guy got hung or they shot a bunch of outlaws and they prop him up and the guy gets behind this big camera, puts the canvas over the top of him, and he has it's almost like gunpowder. It's called flash powder that flashes for a flash to give it light, and they get an image on this ground glass. They focus it with that. It's got a bellows on it, and then the image is preserved with a silver nitrate. But they got to keep it in the dark because once they get it in a light area, it'll be exposed. That's why we had dark rooms and we had red light. Red light would not affect the silver nitrate, so you're still able to see. Like the wheel, lenses did the same thing for us in entertainment. Lenses also help people to see. And lenses aren't always the type of thing that you think, the physical lens. Sometimes the most powerful lens is not a lens at all, like an electron microscope. You can see things that a regular lens type microscope can't see. And it does not use a lens. It uses light waves bent with a digital electronic system, but it can see something as small as the atom. So we're learning all the time. We're developing all the time, just like camera equipment and photography equipment has come a long ways. And technology in the last 100 years has probably advanced more than it has in the last 1,000 years, just in the last 100 years. But who knows how many civilizations became before us? Who knows how many civilizations reached a much higher level of technology than we are right now, that are still here on, in some layer down on Earth. And who knows where we came from? We may have come from Mars when Mars was lifelike, Earth-like. It had water and had atmosphere and had a magnetic field. We may have, we've seen the magnetic field was going away, and we were losing our atmosphere to the solar winds because we didn't have a magnetic field, and the atmosphere would be blown away. They had the technology to go to the nearest planet, which was like theirs, and it was Earth. So who knows? And it seems like I'm really rambling here, but all I'm trying to do is prove a point. When you ask a question, like where did cameras from, or what's the story about lenses or history of that? It's the story of mankind observing and learning about things that he doesn't understand. And anytime you look up at the sky or look down at the ground, if you think, there's always something that you don't understand about it. And we are still at that infancy of looking at the drop of water when it comes to understanding what's around us. We're at that same thing. We look at the drop of water and see that things are distorted when we look through water. And that was man's first experience of seeing things that we can't normally see, was the camera and the lens. So we're opening our eyes now through that drop of water and through our curiosity as a species to some of the other things that's around us and surround us and are underneath us and everywhere. And we find out we know very, very little about anything. And we're just beginning to learn, and a lot of the things that we're learning violate all the principles of physics, mathematics, but we're learning that, we're not really that far ahead as a species to where we need to be. And, we just got a long way to go. And, you can be sure that because of lenses and because of videography and cameras, that the history will be well recorded. Anyway, I could go on and on forever talking about this, but that kind of is a synopsis on lenses and how they affected us here on this planet. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Dad.
Yep.
That's great.
But it's true. It's true when you think about it. Really true.
Hey, so that was my dad discussing the history of cinema lenses. And if you're into this kind of a thing, please Google what he said and find out if it's actually real. I highly doubt it, but if it is, leave a comment down below and let us know what you found. As you can see, he's a guy that can talk about things and make it interesting and fun to listen to. And that is what storytelling is all about. It's about engaging your audience. It's about mixing in a little bit of facts with the fantastical and creating a story that's fun to listen to and to enjoy and to watch. And you can bring these techniques and this kind of philosophy of how to tell stories into whatever medium you choose, right? Whether it be writing, whether it be filmmaking, whether it be, I don't know, YouTube itself as a creator. Take the idea of being able to engage your audience and tell an engaging story into whatever you do, because that's really what's going to count. That's what's going to help people, stay engaged with your stories and whatever you make. And it's really important to be able to do that. And it's an art form, man. It's one of those things where it's like, if you don't have it, it's definitely something you can work on and get better at. Obviously, my dad's been BSing with me for years and years, so he's a master storyteller at this point, and I hope to be that good one day. But I'm going to keep working on it, and that's what it's all about, right? You can read books, you can go to classes, you can do all kinds of stuff, but the best thing in the world is to go out there and do what you can to tell your stories. And if you fail, great, learn from it, do better next time. That's really what's going to make you a better storyteller in the end. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed story time with my dad, and we will definitely see you guys in the next video. Remember to subscribe, like, hit the bell, all the good stuff. Thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. We appreciate you joining us on this adventure of filmmaking, and we'll see you soon. Okay, see you.